Initially, I knew that I wanted to go back to grad school, so I started researching, and I ended up choosing the K-State program just for a variety of reasons. One, it was online, which made it very flexible for me to still have a full-time career, but it also provided the opportunity to come on campus and network and engage with my peers and with the faculty here as well. And also just wanted to stick with a university that had a strong reputation and especially had deep roots in agriculture.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And this week, lawmakers returned back to Washington from their July 4th recess and really on the House side especially, took a deep dive into the appropriations process. We saw a number of bills come out that were important to agriculture, with a number of provisions that are going to be very, very critical to the nation's ag policy wonks. And so Phil and I are going to take a bit of a dive here on some of those. And Phil, obviously, the one with the greatest level of significance to agricultural folks is the bill that funds the Food and Drug Administration as well as the Department of Agriculture, and that cleared out of the full House Appropriations Committee. Right. It's a bit late in the process. You know, our new fiscal year, 2018, starts October 1st. Usually they would be getting, the appropriators would start working, start getting these bills written back in April and May, off to a late start because of the new administration taking office. But you're right, this week the House Appropriations Committee did pass out its FY18 bill for USDA and FDA. Top line message from this is they essentially, almost across the board, rejected the major proposals in President Trump's budget. He proposed to gut a lot of rural development programs, international food aid, agricultural research. All of those are funded. International food aid, almost very close to what it had been getting. Ag research, everything, including those programs, took a haircut, took a cut, but all of those programs were preserved rather than many of them that the president wanted eliminated. They rejected those. And in some other appropriations language in another bill, specifically, we saw a provision that obviously folks watching this program are very familiar with the Waters of the U.S. saga that has been unfolding for years now, but Congress taking another bite at that apple through the appropriations process this week. Right, both a couple of bills, one that funds the Corps of Engineers, the other one that funds the EPA, both have a provision that's sort of intended to allow, kind of accelerate the process of repealing the Obama rule and bringing out a replacement. It would short circuit the notice and comment period required on the old rule. How much impact this will actually have really remains to be seen. We're just at the beginning of this process, and there's a good chance that the spending legislation won't be enacted, you wouldn't think, before the end of the year, maybe even later than that. And of course the fiscal year starts October 1st, so we're going to be having some kind of, we'll have a temporary spending bill, continuing resolution to fund the government in the first few months of the fiscal year. So sends a message. Don't know that it'll have a big impact on the process for getting out that new WOTUS rule. And aside from those two bills, we did also see some movement on some other appropriations language. I guess I would just say stay tuned to agripulse.com. We'll have more coverage on that as the appropriations process continues to unfold on the House side, and also seeing some folks go before the Senate appropriations subcommittees as well. So really getting into the nitty-gritty of the appropriations process here on Capitol Hill. Now, the other thing you have to watch for, Spencer, in these bill are various policy provisions that did get added as part of the process. When this Ag Appropriations bill was, before it was approved this week, the committee approved an amendment really aimed at putting some curbs on, or slow down USDA's approval of imports of chicken from China. This was, as you know, part of the trade-off that we made with China to get them to resume imports of beef. USDA has the wheels in motion to begin allowing imports of Chinese chicken, and there was a provision put in the bill that would basically require USDA to certify that China's poultry inspection system for the entire country is equivalent to the U.S. system. The way USDA had been moving is that they were focused on a couple of provinces and the inspection system that affected for the plants that would actually be exporting to the U.S. So it'll be worth watching, see how that comes out. Those sorts of provisions sometimes are some of the most significant things that get written into these bills. So they become policy as much as about money.
So it's always interesting to see how the power of the purse is wielded on Capitol Hill this time of year, as Congress looks to fund itself and the government here in the upcoming fiscal year. I want to close with something that happened earlier this week down in Atlanta, Georgia. Agriculture Secretary Perdue had a chance to address the School Nutrition Association, which is a particularly interesting group for this secretary due to the actions he's taken on school lunches. He took issue apparently with some of these actions he's taken being described as a rollback of the nutrition guidelines. Rather, he says they're a freeze, keeping things where they currently stand with the school nutrition and school lunch rules. But one thing he really mentioned, Phil, was to the School Nutrition Association that he'd like their input on where they go from here.
Yeah, he did sort of open the door to making some actual changes in the standards. And he told the school nutrition directors, this was a group that had a fairly rocky relationship with his predecessor, Tom Vilsack. Secretary Perdue said, I want you at the table giving me advice on where we should go with this. He also made another point of pushing back on what has been argued about the standards. The argument from the supporters has been that look, most schools, the vast majority of schools are complying with these. They're not a problem. Secretary Perdue said, well, people are complying because they have to. It doesn't mean they're a good idea. So he's very clearly seems to be setting the department on the course of going back and revising those standards, reopening them.
Yeah, that was one of the first actions he took as Agriculture Secretary, was to go to a school in Virginia and just kind of make his opinion known on a lot of these school lunch standards. And so it'll be interesting to see how he carries forward in that, and especially what the Department of Agriculture is going to do in terms of how the department administers school lunch programs across the country. But I think that's going to do it for the news and events of this week. We'll be sure to keep you up to date and informed as things unfold here on Capitol Hill. But for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.